Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode, RECUT 20 lawns, because every blade grass needs to be the same exact height. Okay. You can't get quarters from bug bites. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. RECUT 20 lawns, because every blade grass needs to be the same exact height. Okay. The characters. The crew. My foreman, my direct boss, John. My co-worker, L. Our manager, my foreman's boss, incompetent Deck. Some context. So this happened a summer ago. I'm a college student, and in the summer, when I'm home, I typically work in landscaping and landscape design as a laborer. Think laying sod and bricks, building fences and decks, or cutting grass. I also live in Mississippi, so it's hot as balls and humid as hell in the summer. This particular summer I was working on the landscaping side, so I was cutting grass, pulling weeds, upkeep sort of stuff. When it came time to cut grass, I was on weed eater duty. My job was to do trim work, basically cut grass the mower can't reach. The day. So this Thursday was a particularly hot one, just after good rain, and so it was excessively hot and humid. To add on to this, the job for that day was a contract place that was 20 or so houses arranged in a circle around two ponds and a walking path, making the humidity even higher because of the ponds and lack of airflow, tall trees around and in the place. The lots themselves weren't particularly big, but the place took 9 to 11 hours to do well, and most the houses also had the super cranky old people in them that would complain over the most minor things, in talking one weed in a flower box under a bush. So we arrive at like 6:15 and get to cutting and all that good stuff. I grab my weed eater, throw my earbuds in, and do my thing. While I weed eat, I am continually walking and occasionally will bump the weed eater with my leg, raising it up a little bit, and making the grass slightly uneven every so often, maybe half an inch at the most. This usually isn't noticeable, but if it happens up against a house or structure, you can tell if you look for it. So I will typically go back and try to level it out the best I can if I notice it happen. I do the whole place, front yards and backyards. We then weed the whole place front and back. We are getting ready to pack up and head home. It's like 4 o'clock by now, when incompetent Deck comes to the job site and starts looking around. He finishes up and pulls John aside and shows him around the place, then leaves. This process took an hour or so myself, John, and Elle have just burnt an hour on overtime doing nothing. By this point in the week it was typical for us to be running on overtime. John comes over to Elle and I, telling us that we missed a ton of stuff, and to grab the weed eaters and a bucket. We then walk around the place and John starts pointing out groups of like 4 blades of grass that are fractions of an inch higher than the others, barely noticeable *T, like you really gotta look for this stuff hard. Furthermore, if you try to cut some of these with a weed eater, they bend from the downwash of the spinning strings, so you risk gouging a nice 5 to 12 inch circle in the grass trying to cut like 4 blades of grass. We begin to redo the whole place front and back, pulling small as weeds here and there from under bushes, and doing our best to cut the offending blades of grass. By the second house, L and I are *ching to John, we are hot and tired. It's like 5:30, and we know this will take us 2 more hours. John tells us he knows this is stupid, and it's not his fault. He understands the stupidity and our pissedness. Cue malicious compliance. L and I decide we are going to make sure all offending blades of grass are cut to the same height, that new height dirt. The thing is, if you cut grass too low it can die. We knew this, but incompetent Deck and the cranky old people wanted it the same height exactly, and that's what they were going to get. We rewalk the place and cut any grass that is against something and over the height of dirt. We also made sure to hold our weed eaters in a way that when we cut the offending grass, we hit the surrounding grass with the full 12 in diameter of the weed eater, leaving a nice 12 in circle spot that you couldn't see now, but would when the grass died in a few days. We leveled all the grass against any structure, leaving a nice gouge where walls, fences, and flower beds met the lawn. We finished around 7:30 and headed home. And didn't hear a peep the next day. The next week the lawns had 12 and brown circles of grass everywhere. By Tuesday, incompetent Deck talked to John about it, John just told him the offending blades had been cut as he asked, and something along the lines of it was all now uniform in height. We couldn't help that some of the grass didn't survive the new stringent height regulations. Incompetent Deck never talked to L, John, or myself about it again. A few notes and fallout. This wasn't the first time and wouldn't be the last time Incompetent Deck came to nitpick our work at the end of a day, which would sometimes result in us having to drive across the city, or walk a mile or two up a road at the end of a day to fix **t little things that weren't messed up, adding hours to already long hot days. Though it was the last time we ever had problems at that place. We also got the satisfaction of knowing that Incompetent Deck had to take the numerous calls from cranky old people about their lawns for a few weeks. These people would cuss us out, even before this incident, so I don't want to imagine what they told him. The lawns had still had pretty noticeable dead spots and scars when I left towards the end of the summer. Also, Incompetent Deck saw himself as better than any of the filthy laborers, L and I, and would avoid critiquing us to our faces. This is primarily because the few times he nitpicked us directly we either told him why it was stupid or handed him our equipment and told him to do it himself, which he would then proceed to **ck up. This was a common sentiment he held towards all of the crews under his supervision, and their reactions when he critiqued them similarly were similar to ours. In the mornings at the shop he would sometimes talk about how we needed to be more respectful to him. He was our boss, to which people would reply something about him respecting our quality work, which it was 99% of the time, not nitpicking stupid **t, and not showing up at the end of a day to give us more dumb **t to do, such as chop a tree down and then drive off expecting us to load it up when he had an empty open-top trailer, and we had a full box truck. What we did made its way to other crews, and they carried out similar antics, which lead to him getting a tough time from his bosses who held him responsible for these events. The effects of this general disdain eventually got to him so much, so you could see it just by the way he carried himself, and the stress on his face. You can't get quarters from bug bites. When I was in the Army, my unit had a training day one day where we did tactical movements and close quarters combat with paintball guns. It was pretty fun. Except it was in Texas in the middle of summer in a training area full of tall grass that I ended up crawling around in a lot. I didn't notice any problems until a couple hours later when I was getting ready to head home and my legs started burning. I pulled my boots off and rolled my pants up, and my feet and legs up to my mid-thigh were swollen and covered in hundreds of angry red welts. Apparently I'd crawled through a nest of chiggers, tiny biting bugs common in America that are apparently called trombiculati officially, and they'd gone to town on my legs, bad enough to provoke an allergic reaction. I drive myself to the emergency room at the base hospital, and while I'm waiting to be seen and feeling more and more terrible, but needing to focus on something else, I started counting the bites. I stopped when I got to 100, and that was just on the inside of my right calf. The doc had never seen anything like it, and I ended up getting a massive dose of steroids, antibiotics, and inflammatories, all hospital grade and with serious side effects of their own, as well as 4 days of quarters, the military equivalent of being told to stay home and don't come into work. My girlfriend came and picked me up from the hospital and drove me home because at that point I was in no state to drive myself between the allergic reaction and the meds I was on to treat it. On the way home, I call my sergeant to let him know about my situation so he can get word up the chain of command. About an hour after that, I get a call from the first sergeant, the senior-most NCO in the unit, herself. Now she was one of the most incompetent first sergeants I ever worked with during my time in the Army. Constantly making terrible decision, mindlessly green-lighting whatever terrible decision our equally incompetent captain came up with, and micromanaging people unnecessarily. She tell me that my quarters has been revoked by the captain, and that I have to come in the following day. I tell her that I'm holding orders in my hand from a doctor, who's also a lieutenant colonel, that I'm supposed to take time off to recover. She responds with "You can't get quarters from bug bites," and rants at me that I'm just malingering and trying to get out of work. There was no way I could possibly seriously ill from just some bug bites. I tried to explain that I'd had an allergic reaction, but she wasn't having it, insisting I was a liar and a bad soldier because of it. I was to be at formation the next morning at 0900, because of the extensive exercise we all got at the training event. They'd cancelled PT for the day, with my supposed quarters slip, and they would decide then if they were going to punish me more for trying to pull this stunt. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, I wore my PT uniform, a t-shirt and shorts, rather than our fatigues the next day, and had my girlfriend drive me in. I was still too messed up from the bites and meds to drive. I figured if I was going to get in trouble anyways, being in the wrong uniform would be the least of my worries. But my bare legs instead showed off the literal hundreds of now angrily red, almost purple or black in some cases, huge welts on my legs. The skin was more welt than not by the next morning. And I walked up showing off that rather horrific sight to my entire company of more than 100 enlisted, NCOs and officers. Literally everyone who sees me is like Quester SA. What the F***CK happened to your legs? It's clear to every single person in the company that I am actually legitimately having an allergic reaction just by sight alone. The first sergeant hears people making a ruckus, sees me, and turns bright red, knowing she F***ed up when she hears me answering warrant officers, including my direct supervisor, asking why are you here if you're that sick, with first sergeant made me come in and told me that you can't get quarters because of bug bites. Within 10 minutes, I've handed in a copy of my quarters slip, gotten a quiet, and very private, apology from the first sergeant, and was sent home for the next 4 days.